What's up, guys? This is Matt Myers, and welcome to the pilot episode of Applied OS. The goal of this short video series is to talk about the information that we get from original strength workshops and as coaches, and then really dive into how to apply it. So one thing I've realized in my experience with OS is that information without action or execution is really useless, right? So we have this growing community of OS coaches and practitioners across the globe. Why not tap into that resource and tease out some of the ways that people are implementing the OS principles and practices in their own unique environments, successes they've had, questions they've had, things they're struggling with, things that we should all try, and really come together in a way to benefit everybody. And I remember when I first started and had gone to my first pro reset workshop several years ago, I came away just overwhelmed by the tidal wave of information. And one of the things I did, and probably the best thing I did, was reach out to Tim and Danny and just say, man, I'm overloaded right now. I have so many questions and I just need help sorting through this. And OS and Tim and Danny, being so amazing like they are, took me under their wing and helped work me through that. Now that our community is growing, we can do that for each other. Tim and Danny, I know, are spread thin. They do so much for us. Let's take it upon ourselves to really help out the community and continue to build our knowledge base and really create a collaborative space where we can all come together. So I approached Danny about this idea of this Applied OS short video series and what we could do with that. And they were immediately on board, gave me the green light to go. The goal is going to be to try to keep these about 10 minutes long so that they're easily digestible. I'll be contacting a bunch of coaches and practitioners in the upcoming weeks to set up time so we can do an episode like this, hopefully once every 2 weeks. And if you guys have feedback for me, like maybe I need a better background than the bookshelf in my guest room, or the mic doesn't sound good, or you want to be able to see my mouth, not this giant pop filter. Whatever it is, I'm really open to that. You can email me at freefitguy@gmail.com at any time. And today I thought I'd kind of take you through a little sample of what we're going to get into by kind of doing a self-interview and talking through some of the questions. So first off, what kind of space do I work in? What's my role? How do I utilize OS in my life, especially as a coach? So I work at a gym called Force Fitness and Performance in Bloomington, Indiana. We are a kind of semi-private and group training only facility. We have 7 other coaches on staff. We have between 300 and 400 clients at any given time, and they range everywhere from 10-year-olds who are doing very basic movement-based stuff up to 70 and 80-year-olds who are also doing very basic movement-based stuff, and then the whole gambit in between of the lifespan of an athlete, right? So lots of general population, but also lots of high school and middle school athletes, and a range of people in between, some collegiate athletes as well as a very competitive Olympic weightlifting team. So I've been there for 5 years, and I'm basically in charge of the adult programming, a lot of the group programming, and I run the Ninja Academy, which is what OS Play is heavily based off of, my workshop for original strength, on the side. And there's different applications for original strength in each of these areas. And one of the initial things that I had to deal with is that I have a staff of 8 other people, all who have varying levels of confidence with original strength. A couple of them had done pressing reset workshop. Most of them haven't, and have just gotten me giving them presentations about the concepts and reinforcing things. I think the biggest hurdle that I didn't realize in the beginning, biggest mistake I didn't realize in the beginning, was really making things simple and easy to apply. And we think of OS as being simple and easy to apply, but I really tried to almost dive in immediately to the idea of you are your own chef, and I wanted people to understand that there wasn't a specific code. Like I couldn't tell them that they had to do this in this situation all the time, because based on the person, there could be different applications. There's different ways to do stuff. And I think that almost handicapped people in the beginning, where they handcuffed people in the beginning. They felt like restricted by that, weren't exactly sure to where to go. And because they weren't sure where to go, what happens? There's not a lot of movement anywhere, right? So this is what we've done and how I kind of apply it now. So in our semi-private, everyone gets a program every month, and I write a individual warm-up, or a warm-up for everyone every month. What I did with those warm-ups is I actually created a structure for warm-ups. So based on something that we were seeing, either in the original strength screening assessment, the OSSA, or the FMS, and we still use both. If we saw something that was flagged, my coaches who are programming for their own individual clients can go in and pick a very specific set of movements they go through. The first 5 movements anyone ever does in our gym are resets. No matter what program they're in, they do them for a minimum of a minute, so at least 5 minutes a day. I know I have resets. And then the rest of the warm-up is going to be joint-specific work if we see something that we need to make work along the chain. And then more locomotive work, right? So this is where my marching and crawling and even some hanging variations and floor transition variations would go into, as well as some other dynamic warm-up stuff, right? So once I set them and gave them the option of having this base, like, hey, hip mobility 1, hip mobility 2, right? Shoulder mobility 1, shoulder mobility 2, stability developer 1, stability 2. Based on my best guess of how to develop someone that have common traits within these things, that really set things off. People really took that and started running with it. And that's been a huge boon for me to have those initial ones, because once they got their feet wet with that, my coaches were asking more questions, felt more confident to make changes once they felt like they had a base to start from. So I think it's really important, if you're working in a group environment with other people, rather than try to push them out of the nest early, go ahead and hold their hand a bit, give them some structure, because I think you can still get so much benefit from OS and from the resets, even if they're not like the quote unquote like perfect progression regression at that time. I think that's another thing about how I apply original strength within our programming, is I really believe in developing almost a curriculum for people. So when they first come in, and I believe in the variety within the resets. So we always do resets, but I think variety is important because of the novelty in the brain, exposing the body to new situations and new sensations, this whole feedback loop that we're trying to develop, increasing the sensory integration, increasing the sensory feedback. I want to give them new situations in order to learn and apply. I feel like that learning curve is so important. So I almost think of it like a curriculum where I'm going to use the OSSA, and the first time they come in, if I write their warm-up, or if they're doing a basic warm-up with us, I use the baselines for the OSSA screen and assessment in order, so like their warm-up for the first month, essentially every time I'm walking around and checking them, I get to screen them. I'm seeing the baseline movements, and then I know I can make adjustments from there immediately. The second piece of this is, once I have that initial thing, I want to give them variations that I know they can be successful with, but continually switch it and build it up over the course of 6 months, 6 programs, until they're starting to feel really confident with the resets, and they almost have a repertoire. They have a little menu that they can use and go back to. And after about 6 months, how I program the resets and what I ask of people changes a little bit. We start moving into combos, transitions, and explorations, right? So I'll be like, all right, I want to program an upper quadrant roll into a whip roll, into an egg roll, right? So they're doing combo variations to explore, or we're doing a frog rock back into a sit through to shin box into forward crawl, or whatever combination it is. I'm starting to introduce these transitional elements and these combinations to people and give them some idea. And this is one thing, if you haven't started doing yet, I really recommend you do with your clients, because my clients love it. They have so much fun with it. I think it's really engaging once they have that baseline where it's not frustrating because they aren't aware of the different movements as themselves, but you can start building them into a circuit. And then eventually my ultimate level with my more advanced clients and movement clients is it just becomes open exploration time, where I'm just saying, play with these type of transitions for 2 minutes. Explore this thing for 2 minutes. Play with reaching this way for 2 minutes from these various positions. And once I'm really building the freedom in. I really want to build autonomy in my clients. I don't want them to be dependent. I think a lot of the ways, if we overcoach people and don't create a curriculum and a structure for people to move through these resets and to develop this body awareness, we end up people just hyper-analyze every little movement they do. They get stuck in their own head, and they're not getting the benefit, I think, of the resets with that great sensory integration and lots of input. So that's kind of how we do that. And then we do, based on the client's level, that we'll get assessed initially. And I'll know, like, I'm either putting them on an OS program, which is all OS, or I'm putting them on like what we call like a Force 101 program, which would be a combination of resets with basic movement patterns, strength and conditioning, just like your bread and butter. Okay. With our group training, we use the resets in a couple different ways. Again, first 5 minutes, always resets. And then there's going to be more marching and crawling in there. In between any round or circuit of group training that we do, we provide a reset for people to do in that time. It gives them something to do. They don't feel, most people in a group training environment, they want to be moving the whole time. But if you give them a reset or something to focus on, then they're okay doing that for a minute or a couple minutes in between in their rest cycle. The rest does not become an issue, and it's a really great way to get them to reset and hit the button more often. Yeah, so those are like the big things there with our athletes and with our weightlifters. I came up with like a specific weightlifting reset progression for Coach Will to use. And as soon as I did that, they started using it more. Have a lot of great success stories, actually. The first night that they started teaching upper quadrant rolling, the weightlifters were hitting PRs and we're just like, what is this stuff, right? It was really awesome. And that's the kind of buy-in that we need. So create something that's really tangible, easily accessible for people that they can implement, and then get the buy-in. And then we'll also do breakout sessions and some other stuff like that. I know I'm already running out on time, and Danny's going to be mad at me for going more than 10 minutes. Sorry, Danny. We might go a little longer. It's a pilot. Got to figure it out. So those are basically how I implement it, and I find that really works well. We do resets within the workout as needed. Oh, here's the other big thing is I have the Ninja Academy. So Ninja Academy, I start out every day with some sort of self-assessment, usually a toe touch or a squat or something. I keep it consistent for people across months and months and months. So they're going to come in, they're going to give me a really quick self-assessment like, hey, where are you at today? And then off of that, if people are feeling really good versus feeling very tight, I'll either do something that's more restorative and really slow and builds with the resets as our initial warm-up, or I'll do something that's a little bit more loaded and intense and playful with the initial warm-up period. And we'll go anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes with that, and it's all spontaneous flow. And I know this is something that Danny plays with a lot, but I literally just get on the floor. I'm like, follow along with me. We're going to go through these positions. I keep them moving. I keep it either gentle or more intense. We try lots of reaches. And I think this is something that we're just starting to tap into the power of this. And I touched on it a little bit with the semi-private training, but getting people into this flow, transitioning, reaching, really feeling their body. Like the more sensory integration we get, the more types of different angles we hit, the more awareness we're building, I think the better. And the cool thing about that is, we have these basic movement patterns, rocking, rolling, crawling, nodding, all the rest. But if you look at most kids, like they all get there a slightly different way. It looks like accidents most of the time. I don't think we should think of those accidents and those weird in-between positions as something that is just like we want to skip straight to the perfect rep, right? This is the whole thing, like good, better, best. Maybe actually getting some of those weird angles on a rock and trying different things, and it's not perfectly linear or perfectly smooth, but you're trying to figure out how to move from somewhere. I think that learning component of the resets is just so powerful and untapped. So it's like I actually want to introduce some randomness and some variability in the resets and these transitions and flows so that I think they're getting even more benefit out of it. And I don't think I've had a single time where I do something like this and then we recheck and everyone feels better. And then we start our play session and we go into stuff. So I really recommend doing that. I even do it with my little kids, 6 to 9 and 10 to 12. And with them, it's really easy. It's just follow the leader. I make it fun. I go from slow and really controlled to really fast, play around with speed, play around with tempo, play around with following them around. Like it's the easiest way to implement the resets. Becomes a game just because they're following you along. And you don't have to make it more complex. It's really, really wonderful. Okay. Last couple things from me. I hope you guys are enjoying this and this helps. Mistakes I see in OS and how people apply OS or things that I've made mistakes in. I think we really need to continue to focus on external cues more and more. When I initially taught OS and just coaching in general, I was really heavily focused on internal cueing, like talking about hips and shoulders. Focus on where the eyes are. That's one of the best cues for any OS move is just talk about where to look, as we know. But I think it's easy to forget. The other two things to really think about, your arms, your hands, and your legs are really like the drivers, and your eyes are the 3 drivers for movement. And this is a really key concept. So we can think of this like a head roll, I'm using my eyes. An upper quadrant roll, I'm using my eyes, but I'm also really using my arm to drive the movement. And then for lower quadrant roll, I'm using my leg, right? Those all affect the body differently. And you can use those 3 drivers to explore any of the resets and tweak them a little bit, and also give people targets, external targets for the hands, the feet, the eyes that really produce better movement. If you're going to talk about internal at all, I usually prefer to talk about the sensations, the pressure of the back across the ground, how it feels to flow across, what that feels like. So now they're really still focused on the ground contact, that rich sensory feedback, rather than trying to hyperanalyze like the little things that are happening in their hips and their necks and their shoulders. So play around with especially talking about sensations if you haven't done that yet. Yeah, I mean, I've made so many mistakes, guys. I think most of the things I've learned come from making tons of mistakes, right? Feeling like loading things up too quickly, undervaluing the interior chain, not spending enough time on breathing, trying to belly breathe so much I actually stopped using my ribs at all. Giving people a roadmap in the beginning, give them more control as you go, essentially over and over again. Okay. If you haven't, stuff I'm tinkering with, more ground transitions and flows like we talked about. I'm always looking for new games. This upcoming year, I'm doing an interesting thing where I'm going to combine an OS workshop with a weightlifting workshop. So Will's going to teach a weightlifting clinic on Sunday. I'm going to do a pressing reset on Saturday, and then I'm going to stick around on Sunday and help the weightlifters do some resets and try to tie that together and kind of combine those communities, which I'm really stoked about. And then if I just had one thing I'd want people to try, we talk about this a little bit with Rick, who's doing the outdoor workshop, but being in a rich sensory environment, going out into nature and doing these resets is so potent. It's so powerful. I can't tell you, like when I've thrown out my back or tweaked my back or had something going on, I could reset the day away and it helps a little bit. I go and do some resets outside. I feel so much better. I don't know if it's earthing or if it's sunlight. I think it's just that it's such a more rich sensory environment. There's so much more happening that you can absorb that it's really changing the phase state of how you move. So please, if you haven't yet, please try doing this and get a little dirty outside, and encourage your clients to do so as well. Okay. Hope that was good, guys. 20 minutes. We'll be putting this online soon, and pretty soon these will be Skype calls rather than just me sitting on in front of a camera and recording these. But I hope you really enjoyed it, and yeah, please give me feedback, and I'll look forward to chatting with you guys soon. Take care.